In Falls Village, after a major demonstration by the Schaghticoke people in Hartford, Connecticut, we're talking with Chief Richard Velky and Russell Means. What happened today in Hartford?
Well, we had a protest up at the Capitol to voice our opinion on the neglect that the state of Connecticut has been given the Schaghticoke tribal nation. And by that I mean there's been destruction happening to our reservation since November of 2007. And council members, tribal members, and preservation committee has reached out to the authorities up in Hartford, be it the Department of Environmental Protection Commissioner, the Commissioner of Safety, and the Attorney General. All of them have turned a deaf ear to our people and to our cause. There's individuals up on our land destroying it. They are digging into our artifacts. They are destroying our landscape as we know it. They are approaching on endangered species up there, and nobody seems to care. So as many times as we let our voices out in the town of Kent, it hasn't been getting outside the town of Kent. So today, we took it up to Hartford to be heard.
Let's go to some very basics. Where are the Schaghticoke? How many people are we talking about, and where is this land?
Our reservation is located in Kent, Connecticut. Our reservation was outlined by the Connecticut General Assembly in 1736. And the number of people we have in the tribe total over 300 that have been documented with the Federal Bureau of Indians also. So although we're not a large tribe, we are, at one time, we were the largest land-held tribe in the state of Connecticut. And it looks like the state is trying to take some of that away from us today.
Let me turn to you, Russell Means. Maybe you can talk about why you came down and maybe the bigger picture about the way Indian peoples and tribes are being treated in the U.S. today.
Well, I came at the invitation of the chief and his people, and I came here to tell the truth about the ongoing genocide in this country. Now, that's a harsh word. However, our statistics, the American Indian statistics in the lower 48, are worse than the statistics of the Palestinians in Gaza. It's the worst. If you take out AIDS, we have the worst statistics in the world. Our life expectancy all over the nation is 49 years of age, men and women. Our infant mortality is 500% greater than the rest of America. Our suicides are the highest. Our health is the highest. Diseases unknown in the rest of America are prevalent, like polio and tuberculosis are prevalent and, in fact, epidemic on some of the Indian reservations out west. Now, what I wanted to also point out is we are the most hated people in the Americas, the American Indian, both North, Central, and South America. We are wiped off the face of the earth with impunity. Example, look at the eastern United States of America. According to the white man's own statistics, 14 million pre-Columbian on October 11th, 1492, there was estimated in the 48 contiguous states of America to be 12 to 14 million. At 1900, there was less than 250,000 of us, according to the U.S. Census. That means 99.6% of the American Indians in the 48 states were wiped off the face of the earth. Of that 14 million, that's the white man's statistics, over 80% lived east of the Mississippi. All peoples the world over live where there's water. And of course, the eastern United States has all the water in the United States. The other coast of the Pacific coast held most of the other people. Us Plains Indians were a very minute part, and the Pueblos and the desert people of the Southwest was very minute compared to the rest of our population. All right, 99.6% annihilated through disease and through slaughter. Okay, we've made a comeback. The Schaghticoke are examples of that comeback. Now the United States is so sophisticated, they don't machine gun us down anymore or spread disease like General Amherst did with smallpox blankets. What they do now is a stroke of the pen. The Bureau of Indian Affairs criteria for proving that you are an Indian nation qualified to be federally recognized by the United States of America is very arduous, and it takes a long process. It took over 2 decades for the Schaghticoke to gain recognition. And they started this before there was any casinos in America. They started with their struggle. And they've always maintained their land base, as minute as it is compared to the original. Now, this transcends two nations. They go back to 1736. That was under the King of England. In the transition over to the United States of America, the United States of America, through its newly founded state, Connecticut, assumed the trust responsibility over the Schaghticoke. All right? When they assume that, that's through 2 nations now. There is that fact. No matter, there cannot be argued with. They have the documentation. All right? 5 years ago today, they achieved recognition by the Bureau of Indian Affairs. So what happens? The head of all Zionists in America, Lieberman, especially in Connecticut, he leads the charge, him and Dodd, and the Congressional Congregation of Connecticut, to wipe them off the face of the earth. And so Congress does it.
What was the reason? Why did Lieberman care one way or another?
Because he was petitioned by fellow Republicans that live in the area of the Schaghticoke, all right? And those influential Republican constituents were listened to. Not the Bureau of Indian Affairs, not the documentation, not the trust responsibility of the state of Connecticut, nothing according to the law. Allegedly, the biggest lie in the world, this is supposed to be a nation of laws. This nation of Indian people, again, as well as the rest of us, prove that the United States of America. Now, why are we the most hated people? Because we are the evidence of the Western Hemisphere. I don't care if Indian people look like white people. As long as you have Indian blood, you're hated. Why? Because, again, we are the evidence of the Western Hemisphere. When the white man sees us, he feels guilty because he knows. He knows what he's done. Deep down, it sticks in him. And it makes him sick, and he doesn't like that feeling of truth. So instead of doing something about it according to his Christian teachings, or because this is supposed to be a Christian country according to their laws, instead of doing something that their Jesus Christ, their Savior, has taught them to do about being human beings, no, they take the opposite and they act like cavemen. And that's why they have refined genocide with the stroke of the pen. It's a masterful tactic.
We'll come back to that. Now, when you did get recognition, what was the grounds for, the specific grounds for saying, well, this was a mistake and you should be denied this recognition?
Because we got recognition. That was their specific grounds. The state of Connecticut never thought that the Schaghticoke tribal nation would achieve the federal recognition status. As Russell Means pointed out, there's criteria that need to be met, 7 of them to be exact. And though sometime in our history, the leadership and the community might have been a struggle according to what they needed to prove as an example, however, it was there. So Blumenthal takes it upon himself to say, no, you didn't meet these criterias. The senators, Lieberman and Dodd, were totally against us being recognized. The governor at that time, we were going through trouble with our governor because he ended up in jail for corruption. Okay, and to take the target off of the politicians here in the state of Connecticut, they placed it on the Schaghticoke tribal people. And with their political influence, with the funds and money that they raised in the Kent area, they were successful. They hired the best top lobbyist firm in Washington, D.C., Barbara Haley, and they were successful in going into the White House, having secret meetings with the Department of Interior, threatening jobs of people that stood behind our recognition process until they were successful.
When did that happen? When were they successful?
It happened on Columbus Day of 2005. 2005, yes. So
All right.
18 months after we achieved our recognition that took us since 1981 to accomplish, the state of Connecticut, with their power political influence, overturned it and had it reversed in 18 months.
But the reservation still exists, but is it one person or is it several who are encroaching on it?
Well, I don't know if it's just one, if it's a dozen. There's too much work up there going on and too much property being destroyed.
Could you give us some examples of what you mean by destruction?
Sure. Schaghticoke Mountain is vertical, okay? And we have approximately 400 acres. This individual had taken an excavator and carved a road all the way up to the top of the mountain. I've been in that mountain with surveyors because we looked at one time to put housing up there, and it was the grade was too steep to put a road, okay? But he did put a road with his excavator. He moved huge boulders that weighed tons. He moved with his excavator. He tore out trees, beautiful oak trees, beautiful ash, just tore them out and sold them for firewood. So the amount of damage that he done would have to be surveyed to see, it has to come close to $1 million in damages on our land.
And you find this out and you call authorities and they just don't come?
Oh, we found out immediately, and that was in November of 2007. And because of the lack of their responsibility and their actions, it continued. If they had came out at the time when they were called, we were probably talking about the size of anybody's normal backyard that was destroyed. As bad as that is, at least it was limited to a small amount of area. In that amount of area, it's just not trees and rocks and streams. These are artifacts. Artifacts. We had done a survey up there in 1998 and with the archaeologists, and we have them put away. And over 12,500 artifacts were found just by digging small holes. We have villages in that area that date back that are now probably destroyed. They openly admit, they being the people doing the damage up there, had called the archaeologist, the state archaeologist, and told them that they were digging up artifacts. What should they do with them? And yet still the state didn't do anything to get involved and to stop them. The state left us nothing but a atmosphere for violence on our reservation that once was peace and tranquility. We're here today to change that back to our Schaghticoke people. It's almost like they're pushing us to the limit just to get into a confrontation where we would end up being on the news, and the Attorney General can say, see, we told you these people were just going to fight with one another. It's been a hard decision and a hard-fought battle for us not to get into confrontations. But as I said earlier today, the Schaghticoke people, we live by the rules and the regulations. Now, we expect our elected officials to do the same.
Now, Russell Means, is this typical of what's going on in the U.S.? You know, I think if you ask the average American these days, when they say Indian, they're going to say gambling and they got a lot of money and so on, and they're kind of oblivious. I mean, there was a period in the 60s and 70s when there was a lot of recognition of what happened to Indians, perhaps. But what is the norm now in the U.S.?
Well, the norm is out of sight, out of mind. As long as you're out of sight, out of mind, no one cares, because the genocide, either through health and poverty or just outright denial and a stroke of the pen, like the Schaghticoke are suffering under, that's always been ongoing. And of course, the new stereotype that the Indians are all casino Indians and they're all getting rich, and the only reason the Schaghticoke want to be recognized is to put up a casino, which you have to remember, they started this way before there were casinos. So that's not the reason. They just don't want to face us, that's all. They want the Indian people to go away. Now, the good thing about the state patrol and the county sheriffs and the state of Connecticut ignoring their pleas for justice on their land, the beautiful thing about that is a tacit admission of their sovereignty, that they have the right to determine what goes on their land. So I'm confident, at least under my advice, is that they formed their government, their land use policy, their court system, and their own wardens or whatever, or groundskeepers or keepers of the land, however they want to call their police or equivalent thereof. And they have their own government, and they take care of the wrongdoers on their land, period. It's that simple. And they can do it nonviolently in accordance with the law, because this tacit recognition of their sovereignty by not protecting them and their land and their rights is a great testament to the truth of who they really are. They're a sovereign people that goes back to England. That's another legal question. Now, everyone knows that, or everyone should know, that America, Canada, New Zealand, and Australia are called the Commonwealth countries of England, which means there's a connection between the land of these countries and the king, or in this case, the queen. All right? So they have another recourse, and that is international. 2 courses. One's the Western Shoshone took to the OAS and get a verdict of the United States of America via OAS is the Organization of American States, to get a judgment from them, as the Western Shoshone did, that the United States of America government is violating their human rights. Also to go to the Queen of England for their support and their pressure on the United States government to re-recognize Schaghticoke. All right?
Now, before you mentioned Palestinians and Zionists, and there's a kind of connection, or is there? We have, our program mostly deals with issues about that, about the Palestinians. And a speaker is coming into Connecticut named Benny Morris. And he is an Israeli who wrote about the expulsion of Palestinians in 1948 from their homes. And first it was all scientific, and then he became a political person, and he approved of it and said it wasn't done enough. And if it had been done completely, there wouldn't be any problem over there. And then he made this astounding statement that the American democracy could never have grown unless there had been the annihilation of the American Indian. And all historians understand that now. And I wonder if Indian people know much about the Palestinian situation and appreciate that.
Well, first of all, the American Indian movement back in the 1970s, we identified the American Indian people of the United States as the Palestinians of America, and we call the Palestinians the American Indians of the Middle East, because the policies are the same. Bred, born in the United States of America's Indian policy. Now, what you don't know and have never been told is the truth about the formulation and foundation. It wasn't a Stamp Act. It wasn't governed by lack of representation, whatever that saying is. No, the truth is, the King of England in 1700s and 1736 and 1740s and all of those made treaties with the Indian people west of the Appalachian Mountains and promised England would not grow beyond its 13 colonies, period, beyond the Appalachians. So in the 1750s, 60s, and early 1770s, the landowners, like George Washington, who was the largest landowner in America in 1776, they hired mercenaries. The most famous mercenary they hired was Daniel Boone to go west of the Appalachians and map out the land. So the entire reason for the creation of the United States of America and its rebellion against the King of England was for land speculation, was to expand, and so the rich could get richer. The rich could get richer. Now you must remember, in the colonial times, only white males with property were considered citizens of the United States of America. Everyone else was an indentured servant or a merchant of some type, okay? But under the dominion of the propertied, those who own property, white males. And that was true for decades after the foundation of the United States of America. So that's when the policies of annihilation began. Smallpox blankets, as I mentioned, and other diseases and other measles, letting loose the pigs in the South among the Indian and into the forest, pigs that carry measles and what have you. So, which we were susceptible to. And it goes all the way to the west, not counting the uncommon massacres, like just right north of you in Massachusetts. The killing of what the white man, the Pilgrims, call King Philip, a Wampanoag, the son of the man who welcomed the Pilgrims. They hung his head on a pike outside Pilgrim Village for 35 years, or it's 25. But at any rate, Prince Philip said, Medicum was his name. And so this is the paybacks. That was the original Thanksgiving, by the way, because the then governor, English governor of the colony of Massachusetts, after they had massacred one of Medicum's villages, he called for a celebration of Thanksgiving. And he wrote, and this is a fact, he called for all the colonies to massacre Indians and have feasts of Thanksgivings. That was the first Thanksgiving. And that's documented fact, okay? It's written. So the United States of America, of course, was founded on the big lie, just like Thanksgiving is the big lie. And American history is the big lie. And American policy of annihilation and war continues in Palestine.
Last question, what next for the Schaghticoke and their efforts?
Just to expand a little bit on what Russell was saying also, is the fight that there was for the land, the stealing of the land from the Native Americans. You have to think through all that turmoil that was going on, that Schaghticoke maintained a reservation through all that time. Do you think for 1 second that here in the state of Connecticut, that land would have been still considered Schaghticoke Reservation if we were not the people that belonged to it? Absolutely not, especially the way Russell Means just explained it. What's ahead for the Schaghticoke people? To get back our recognition, to stop the destruction that's happening on our land. And it has to be stopped immediately. And hope today was the beginning of that new step.
Well, thank you both for this interview.
Thank you.